Welcome back to the podcast with your host, Samantha.
And I'm Alexa, and we're here to light up your life.
Today's extraordinary guest is a world-renowned motivational speaker who creates inspiring and motivating content to help individuals achieve their goals and live a fulfilling life. Welcome to the show, Eddie Pinero. We're so happy to have you.
Samantha, Alexa, thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
And we wanted to go ahead and share with you that when we announced to our listeners that we're going to have you coming on to the show, we received an overwhelming amount of questions and feedback. And there's one that really stuck out to us, and we wanted to go ahead and share with you today. So I'll go ahead and read it. This comes from our listener, Tatiana, who says, "Thank you, Eddie, for quitting your full-time job and taking a chance on yourself when you were uncertain. You have made a huge difference in my life and mental health. It's crazy to think where I would be if you've never started fulfilling your purpose."
What a beautiful note.
No.
It really was.
Wow.
Yeah, we couldn't
That's so nice.
the amount of questions, and a lot of people, gave really great feedback. So you've made such a profound impact on so many lives. So what really inspired you to become a motivational speaker?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, it wasn't something in eighth grade I was dreaming about doing, It was, and it's why I sort of stress the importance of taking some time to wander and explore, in your life, because if I didn't, I never would have gotten there. It was a culmination of trying things that I enjoyed doing. So, and let me know if I'm going too deep into this, but long story short is was just doing everything like by the book. So, getting good grades, to go to a good school, to get a good job, to get promoted. And it's like truly to my mid-20s till I looked around and was like, I'm not like happy. I've never once asked myself what I want in my life. And took some time and started playing like acoustic guitar shows around Boston, producing music, doing creative writing, taking the camera out, making little videos and films, and just kind of seeing what I liked, seeing what I didn't, pushing away the things I didn't, gravitating towards the things I like. Clearly, there's a creative spark. And the first time it hit where I was like, I have something here was funny enough, I was realizing like you don't get paid well, like playing acoustic shows around Boston, right? So I'm like, this is getting scary. And it would be really nice to have that paycheck coming in. Like that would be a really comforting thing. And I was tempted to, start sending resumes out to the same companies that I left. And it's not that they aren't wonderful companies with wonderful people, but they're not me, like just not a fit. And I wrote this speech called Ode to Excellence that was like, Eddie, just promise yourself for once, you'll put your back against the wall. And it encompassed all the things I love to do. It was writing a speech, recording the speech. It was music, clips, making a little cinematic 3-minute experience, putting it out there. And I loved doing it. And I started to get like emails from people, hey, this added value to me too. I feel the same way. That was really cool. That was powerful. And that's when you get that sort of intersection of I love doing it and it's helping people. Let's go.
Wow. That's so profound.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was amazing. That's such a amazing way to figure out, what's your true purpose and your true why. And I'm so happy that you were able to find that. Obviously, with all the feedback that you've been receiving, it's had a huge impact on people's lives. So you're doing the right thing and you found your purpose. That's amazing. What is the inspiration for a lot of your videos? What would you say inspires some of the content that's actually in your videos?
Yeah, I'd say it's the day-to-day, the mundane, like paying attention to how I'm feeling and why. Like one of my buddies joked around once. He's like, "Oh, a bird flew over Eddie's shoulder. He's gonna go write a speech about it now." Like it's I think there's a lot of value that we walk right by or miss in our day-to-day. And I love being able to capture that and share it. Guys, I experienced this and it was super helpful. And here's what I took from it. Or guys, I got my ass kicked over here. It wasn't fun. Here's what I'm going to do about it moving forward. And, we aren't practical creatures. We're emotional. And I think when you can tell a story in a way that resonates, people can take the value and implement it into their own lives. We're doing different things, but we're similar in a lot of ways. Like I'm not a single mother or a teacher or an athlete, professional athlete, whatever, but our ups and downs in many ways look similar. and we can learn from each other. And that's been the idea, capturing little pieces of inspiration where I find them and resharing them.
That's really cool. I want to go back to the point you made, excuse me, when you said, you left your full-time 9 to 5 job and, it was really enticing to be able to go back to get that steady paycheck and make you feel comfortable and secure. So what was going through your mind when you ended up quitting and burning the boats and going all in? Because I know that's not easy for so many people to do, but so many people want to live in, like, be fulfilled in their purpose, but something's holding them back. So what would you say?
It's a trade-off, and you have to be willing to sort of pay that price, like it's the passion versus purpose idea. Like, passion, super exciting, it's new, it's fun, but then passion subsides and you're left with reality. And then is purpose enough to string you from one thing to the next to the next? It was really cool to say, guys, I'm a creator now, I don't have a job, like I can work on my own terms, right? But in reality, I'm a 26-year-old in my boxers with no money coming in. Like, that's not cool, sitting at a table, like working by myself. So it attacks the ego in a way that you don't think matters. But to me, and maybe other people are different, to me, that was hard, because I had always put so much emphasis on doing the right thing and being able to say, like, even in class, like, I'm one of the top in my class, or I'm one of the best. Like, I just wanted to overachieve. And now all of a sudden I'm climbing up this hierarchy and I am at the baseline, and you have to be able to deal with that and understand that there's a lot of things that go with it. There's there's obviously the pride, and you learn some of those people in your life that you thought would be there, maybe not so much. It's a little emptier there than you thought it might be. And you learn a lot of things about life and about yourself. I think it's a beautiful payoff. I think it's entirely worth it. And if it means something to you, I would advocate everyone make that journey. Just understand, it's not the highlight reel you see on Instagram. There's a lot of peaks, but there's a ton of valleys, and not many people are willing to trudge through those valleys. And you have to understand that as well. So that would be kind of like my message out on something like that.
So where do you think that came from, you thinking that, and I know we feel the same way, where you have to go to school, get good grades, get a promotion, go to college, and all these things. Where do you think that thought came from? And I know so many people think that. Like, for you specifically.
I think just wanting to do what's right, like thinking about what the expectation is, what is, quote unquote, the standard that's set for me, and not learning to think for yourself. And it sounds funny. Like, there are things I look back and I'm like, what do you mean you didn't think for yourself? But it's not an exaggeration. Like, I was 26 and realized, if I don't want to work in corporate America, I can go do something else. I don't have to. We sort of shackle ourselves in because our worldview is so small. And there's so much power in being able to look outside that and realize there's so much more than what we're conditioned or what we've been taught, what we look around and see. So giving myself the freedom to explore. Like I said, that year, it was so many things. Like, when I left that corporate world and it was doing the music stuff and the writing stuff, it was scary, it was liberating, it was just a reworking of my entire mental framework. I remember running at 2 p.m, and there was a voice in my head being like, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be working. People work at 2 p.m. That's what happens at 2 p.m. How are you running outside right now? Like, that's how insane it was. And that unshackling or unlearning took a lot of time. And I think, to some extent, and maybe for me it was more drastic, right? Maybe there's people listening that are like, that's a little intense, or they give themselves more leeway now. But to some extent, we all do that. And so I think there's value in understanding and pushing those parameters out and out and out and out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I see that in my life too.
Yeah, and I think it was very brave of you, right? You essentially made a leap of faith. I mean, you didn't have a solid, kind of side gig that's going in the right direction. You allowed yourself to take a risk, to take a chance on something that was important and meaningful in your life. And it turned out amazing. But so for so many people, the challenges get too hard. So what would you say really pushed you through some of those tough times? And I'm sure you had them, right? This wasn't a solid thing yet. I'm sure there was times where you're like, well, what am I doing? Should I just turn back now and just go back to my 9 to 5 and go back to that safety net?
Yeah, it was like a head in the clouds, feet on the ground thing. Feet on the ground thing. Like I knew there was something bigger that I was moving towards because I felt compelled to it. I didn't know exactly what that would look like. I just knew there was something there. And then it was just looking directly at my feet, making what I had to make that day, learning to even emotionally detach from how it was perceived and move on to the next. And it became so automated that at times it felt dumb because I was like detached from an outcome. It was just like creating a speech with, very little validation. And you have people around you that love you and care about you and want the best for you that are like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, is there an end game here? Or like, what are we doing? But yeah, you just become so attached to the process and getting better at it. Because here's the reality. If you dedicate yourself to being the 1% or just good at a craft, right, that takes time, financially, you won't have issues. Like you'll be okay if you are excellent at whatever it is you do. It's just getting there. It's giving yourself, the grace to get there. So that's what it was, like really, truly playing the long game. I always talk about like the curve, the growth curve. I've been doing this for about 9 years. I didn't get the hockey stick turn until about 3 years ago, which means like 4 years ago, there were moments where things could have got scary if I didn't get that one guy calling saying, Eddie, I need a video for my company. Can you do this for me? And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Yes. And so it's really hanging in there and seeing it through. Now, there's one thing I wanted to mention too. This does drive me crazy. Like when people who have been successful, when they're asked for advice and they give advice that they didn't do, well, let me just put it in the context of my situation. I jumped off without a lifeline, and it was terrifying, but it forced me to put my back against the wall. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I think there's value in that. But also the pragmatic side of my brain says, there's also no excuse not to be slowly building that lifeline while you're at work too. Like there are a lot of tools online to be building that company, starting to create income, doing these things on the side so that the landing pad's a little softer, particularly if you have a family or there are other obligations. Like I was just a single guy. So, or not married, you know what I mean? So like no kids, nothing like that. And it was a lot easier for me. So there are ways to plan and position and set yourself up for that jump. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in as well.
That's so true. And I was listening to one of your speeches a few weeks ago, and you really highlight that, it's easy for you. For example, if we had dinner plans at 9 o'clock to show up because you're meeting someone else, but to show up for yourself is so much different. And you have to make that commitment. And, it's really keeping those promises that you make to yourself. So when you did quit your 9 to 5 job, what were some things that you set up to make sure that, you did put your back against the wall, but you made those commitments and you showed up every single day? Did you have some sort of goals highlighted? I know a lot of times, a lot of people have these monthly, yearly goals and they break them down into daily goals. So I'm really curious to know how you set yourself up for success moving forward.
Yeah, there wasn't an alternative. It was, this is what you're going to do and you have to do it. I mean, if I didn't do what I said I was going to do, there'd be no channel. Like that's the difference of, having a sort of structured corporate environment where it's like, here are the objectives and someone's, tapping you on the shoulder, asking for them. And when that doesn't happen, you have to recreate that. And that's why it's so important that when you make promises to yourself, you keep them. And by the way, it's not like I don't think anyone's perfect at this. There are always concessions, and the idea is to minimize those to the point where it is extreme. Because if you can't hold yourself accountable, it opens up the floodgates. I talked about like one of the things being the kitchen sink. Um, like if I don't do the dishes once, I'm like, I will forever just leave. Like, who cares, right? I'll just leave dishes in there for a week. So every night there cannot be dishes in those sink. That's like a promise that I'm making to myself. And it seems arbitrary and it seems little, but in a way, it's a microcosm of everything. Like if you say you're going to do something and it's important to you, you have to teach yourself that you do what you say. Because if you break it once, you'll kick the door open. If it's cracked, it might as well be kicked open. And then it just comes down to understanding what those things are. What are those non-negotiables? What are those things that matter to the extent that you want to protect them and make sure that they are tied into and integral to your life and your day to day.
I couldn't agree more. And I think something that you said that was really key there, that I would really agree with is, just keeping yourself, I guess, being disciplined, right? And training that skill. It's really what sets people apart from being successful versus people who might not be achieving their dreams. And I think that's really key. It's why we teach our children to make their bed every morning, before they start their day. It's just some of those things that we decide, are needed to form habits, and it's ways that we are keeping ourselves disciplined. So that's
For
so.
sure.
I agree. And I'm really curious to know, so you had said you've set disciplines, you showed up for yourself. Obviously that builds self-confidence within you because you're keeping the promises you make to yourself. But what is your why has to carry you, and it has to be so much stronger than your limiting beliefs towards, what you're capable of. So what would you say that your why is? And I know a lot of times people say your why makes you cry. So did you do that layer of, I think it's like the 7 layers deep, to really figure out, what your purpose is in this world?
I think so. One of my friends, Evan, says your purpose comes from your pain. And I think for me, understanding how much opportunity was around me, I just had to sort of change the way that I looked at it. It's a metaphor, but I think it really is indicative of reality. Like placing myself in this jail cell and not even realizing it. Realizing the freedom and what I'm able to do. And I just think it's critical to be able to do that and understand that if you don't give yourself permission to do some of these things, no one can. And I love being able to offer that to people and show people that they have more power than they think and more control than they think. And it's sort of a two-part thing, because I get validation from the results, right? That really makes me feel good, getting the emails and the messages and Eddie, thank you. Like this changed the way I was doing X, Y, and Z. And then also the creative process I'm in love with. Like I really enjoy turning on, the music, putting my headphones on and writing something that I think is meaningful to me. It's like an outlet. It's an art to me. And the marriage of those two things, I'm just so grateful for. The process and the outcome are so exciting to me. And I feel really lucky about that.
I was going to ask you, I know we talked about where you get your motivation from, but to actually be able to write your speeches, so you put on music and you just kind of do you sort of go into a meditative state? Or, I mean, your speeches are absolutely profound and they're so inspiring. So you just put on music and you just go ahead and write?
Well, thank you. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's definitely a flow state. I put on like some background music, and I'll have themes in Evernote of like little things that I've jotted down throughout the week and just riff on it. And it's a really fun process. It almost is therapeutic and meditative. But yeah, so the music's going, I write the speech and then record it and get it out there.
Wow. And how many would you say you end up doing per week now?
So I'm releasing 3 per week. It's crazy how fast time flies. So like there's like 800 of them. now. There's just so many, and you go back and it's like an electronic diary or journal. I look at stuff from or listen to a video from 2015, and it's like that's what you were thinking, or even some of the stuff I say, like I completely disagree with. I say, and that's life. That's the journey. And that's what I aim for. The authenticity of here's what's helping me in this moment. Here's what I believe in, sharing it. And, as you evolve, so does your worldview. And so it's fun to just, poke around and go back to the beginning and check some of that stuff out.
What are you hoping is going to develop out of it next? Or what are some next things that you're hoping to accomplish? Or what is like another level you're hoping to bring your content to?
I think scale. So I am, I've been very YouTube centric, and that's great because it's the perfect medium for what I'm doing. But it's fun and interesting to try and find ways to take some of the messaging and put it in different places or deliver it in ways that is different from YouTube or might impact someone who's not a YouTube viewer. So it's the same idea, same message, same craft, but the challenge is how do you diversify and scale it and get it to as many people that can be helped as possible. And it's super fun. It's really fun to do that, and it requires having a team around me of exciting, smart, innovative people, which in and of itself is a blessing because, like I said, this was a solo thing for so many years that, getting a text, it's like, Ed, I have an idea. It's like the most exciting thing for me. I'm like, nice. I'm like, let's talk about it, So yeah, it's a blast.
So now you have a team behind you, you said?
I do. Yeah. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so I know for a lot of people, and it seems like you might be the same way, it's like you want to do everything because you can do it. But I also know that outsourcing is so powerful. So did you see your business grow drastically once you started building a team and having them be the expert in that area for you?
At first, it's so different that you got to take a micro step backwards, and change how you're doing things a little bit. And then you start to see, like, as some time expires, you start to see the upside, yeah. When I first built a team around me, it was like, okay, so maybe it's 80% the quality that I'd like. And that's subjective, right? That's to me, because I've been doing it myself a particular way for years. So one, I've gained a mastery in it. And two, everyone likes their own way, right? So it's like 80% quality wise, but 10 times the reach. So there's a win. And then as you grow together as a team, it's like, whoa, this isn't even 80% quality. Like, I think we're there. And not only that, the people in my circle, on my team doing this stuff, like, they're better than I am at their specific piece of this puzzle. And that's where you start to see the magic. And so, yeah, it really is a cool process to watch unfold. And a lot of entrepreneurs do talk about that. It's like, I don't want to give up the editing. Like, the editing's in the magic. Like, I want control, and it hurts. But if you can let go and be patient and trust that, in the end, not only will it be equivalent, but if you're with the right people, it'll be better. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I'm so curious to know now what your friends and family say, because you said, you were in your apartment at 26 and your friends and family are like, what are you doing? So what do they have to say now to what you've accomplished?
Yeah. Well, my family was incredibly supportive. Like, I'm very lucky in that regard, I think they were worried because I put, I went all in on, academics and, going to a decent school, and had a good career track. And all of a sudden I'm like, no. Right. So they're like, well, wait a minute, they just want what's best. So there were conversations about that. But when I said, no, this is what I'm doing, they were there, man. I mean, my dad knew my stats to every single video before I did. He could talk about any of that stuff. My mom was always calling me, my grandmother always called me, always being supportive. I love this speech. This was great, which it means the world when you're starting out, and let's face it, like no one cares yet, right? I mean, the pragmatic brain says it's part of the process. It's the price you pay. It's dues. I get it, but now do that, right? Because it's hard. It's not easy. So that was an incredible thing. Yeah, and now they're just they're happy for me. It's a great thing. Friends is a different story. I think there wasn't like vitriol or anything, but I would say 90% just disappeared, just dropped off the face of the earth. And that's something that hardens you up too, because it's not, oh, pull out this, the world's smallest violin, poor me. It's like, no, it's life. Everyone's doing their own thing. And even the people that want you to win probably don't want you to do better than them, right? So it's an interesting dynamic where you just have to realize it's not the world against you. It's not personal. It's just how things are. So you keep your circle small. You make sure it's people that love you and care about you, and that respect is reciprocal, and you move forward. And I think about it a lot differently now than I did when I started, 100%.
And I'm just curious to know, what did you study in school? What was the career path that you were on that you so drastically changed from?
Political science. How's that for a curveball?
Wow.
Yeah. It was in political science in a liberal arts school, Holy Cross. And then I didn't even use political science in the corporate world. I was in the insurance industry. So kind of all over the place, but always had that at the heart of things, that sort of creative, artist in me. And it was just trying to figure out how to capture that. I think in hindsight, it took me a long time to get the courage to, but that was always there. I will say though, college, a lot can be said. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about this. Like YouTube, you can learn anything. You can learn how to take a car apart and put it together. Like it makes college, in my mind, less imperative than it once was. And I don't think there are many people that would argue that, unless you're talking about a very specified profession. But there are two things I learned in school. I was on the rowing or the crew team there. And so I really learned how to work and how to push myself to the extent that I just never had in my life. And I learned how to write. I mean, as a political science major, you're just writing papers, right? And so my issue now is that I sometimes write like a political science major, and a lot of people don't respond to that. It's very like stiff sometimes and rigid, but I really attribute school to helping me write and express myself in a way that I couldn't before. So definitely got some value from it, no question.
Wow. I want to go back to the point where you made when you were talking about how friends is a completely different story for you. And a lot of times your friends want to see you do well, but not better than them. So how did you, from your circle, how did you decipher those friends? And how did you know, and like, what were your moves after that, knowing that they just didn't want you to succeed better than they were doing?
I think, I don't think there was like a put my foot down, like, this is it. I just let some things fade away. Like, it's small things, right? And everyone feels this to some extent when you are working on something, right? And you put something out and it's a little vulnerable, right? Like writing a speech about your failure is vulnerable. And, now it's easy because I can put something out and, sometimes hundreds of thousands or millions of people watch it, comment, relate to it. But when it's just you and your buddies are seeing it, like a double tap or a like means a lot, right? And I was surprised that I wasn't getting that. And that to me, like my first instinct was to take it personal, like a sort of me against the world. But that was just a projection of my own insecurity and my own hurt. And one of the things you realize as you go through is that, like I was saying before, like it's just not personal. It's not. You can't take it that way. If like some of those folks I'm still buddies with, like I'm still acquaintances with. I talk to them on the phone. I'll see them at events. Like we'll hang out, have a beer every once in a while. Doesn't matter. But I know like if there's a family emergency, if there's a problem, like they're not going to be the ones I call. And that's okay. You know? Yeah, you learn how much is predicated upon your own courage, your personal agency, your ability to move forward. Because you do feel naked and exposed and alone when you're putting things out into the world. And everyone who's put something on social media understands that. There's definitely a vulnerability to it. And yeah, it's not the world against you. It's just how it goes.
I think that's really important to highlight that you were saying, you know, vulnerability is not easy, but it also becomes your superpower. And to your story, I mean, when you were vulnerable and you still are opening up about what you've been through, so many people reach out to you now and they can relate to those things. And I think that's the most profound thing, is being able to relate to those people on such a deep level. So I think, you know, being vulnerable is definitely a superpower, and it takes a tremendous person to be able to get to that point and to open up at that level. So I think that's incredible that you're able to do that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I agree. I mean, it's hard to talk about, which is why you know, people relate to it. And you know, there's something in like the best songs that are vulnerable that we gravitate to, the best movies, the best, you know, the best everything. There's something very human about it. And so if you're willing to dive into those topics, it creates a forum for discussion and a place where people can meet at an emotive level. And that's where people grow and learn as well. You know, it's not let's talk about our vulnerabilities so we can sulk. It's no, let's talk about our vulnerabilities so we can dive into them and we can all be better and realize, yeah, it's a price, but it's a price that's worth it, because on the other side, you just don't get that. You know, there were so many checkpoints, like using my own personal trajectory, where things hurt or were vulnerable. And those inflection points, the ability to march through them, was everything. You know, you look back, there's just so many times where it could have said, this is it. And like the thing I'm most grateful for is diving into it. One of the best books on the, I always bring this up because it just had a profound impact on me, is Unbroken, where Louis Zamperini, the runner, it's a fictional book. Louis Zamperini, the runner, he ends up fighting in World War II. His plane shot down in the Pacific. He's an American, and the Japanese capture him, and he goes from like camp to camp to camp to camp. Just sees like brute, like he's beaten, almost killed. He sees buddies around him die. Just hell, like hell we couldn't even understand. And eventually, you know, the Americans defeat Japan, right? And so they are there and they capture him or save him. And one of the Americans at camp asks him, like, imagine doing that again. And he says, I couldn't. I'd rather die. And I'm thinking, like, when you look back at something that massive, your brain can't even put it together. Like, you just think, I would die before doing that. That's impossible. The amount of suffering I went through, I couldn't do it again. But then you think, by putting your head down and just going day by day by day and surviving one horrific event, in his case, after another, puts you somewhere where you look over your shoulder and go, how could a human being even endure that? But I did, by showing up every day. Now that's like obviously an extreme example, but that is even more to the point. Like, we're not fighting a war. We're going through our own thing, right? Our own trajectories. And I think it goes to the power of putting your head down and just day by day doing the hard thing, but the right thing. And that compounds to, when time passes, you look back and go, how did I do this? Look how far I've come just by saying yes to what's in front of me. So yeah, it's a good book. Definitely recommend everyone read it.
We're definitely going to read that. And I think
Sounds
it's
great.
so important, you know, 1% better every single day towards your goals.
Yeah, I really like
Love it. Yeah.
you just made. I think it reminds me to a lot of the Holocaust stories that we hear about, right? Where some people went these awful experiences, and I'm sure anybody who's in any of these camps experienced similar like things, but then we hear about the people who were really positive about the experience, right? I'm sure it was horrible things that were happening to them every day, but because they had the right attitude or positive outlook or positive expectation of what's to come, they just had a positive outlook on life, their experience was a little bit different. And I think that has a huge impact. If we just have the right attitude, an open mind, and being positive, the outlook is so much different.
I couldn't agree more.
So true. Yeah. Viktor Frankl says that in Man's Search for Meaning, which is about his time in the Holocaust, during the Holocaust. Attitude is the one thing you can't take away from a man, which is like just chilling. It's so profound. But yeah, your outlook is everything.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And so, kind of to wrap this up, we want to know, was all of it worth it? You quitting your 9 to 5, you going through all of these massive challenges, not knowing when your next paycheck is going to be, and then you get the phone call. Was it all worth it to get to the point where you are now?
10,000%. 10,000. And it's worth noting too that, because people might be going through similar things than we talked about, we're talking about the pain points and the inflection points, and the moments of duress, but moving forward. But that's supplemented with some incredible, amazing, beautiful moments, right? For every valley, there was a mountaintop. It's life oscillates, and you get to experience things, and you get just the joy of an adventure that you can't get when you don't dive into what's meaningful to you. And so that really needs to be stressed. Like, yeah, 10,000%, life is hard innately, and you'll find obstacles that come your way, and putting your head down and knowing that you can get through them is everything. But understand why, understand the joy of doing something that's fulfilling and meaningful to you. You can't beat it. So when you ask that question, yeah, worth it. And also, I wouldn't have it any other way. It was the best decision I ever made, because getting out of bed and saying I'm doing something that matters to me is unbelievable. I always used to joke around with my buddy. We would pray for a flat tire on the way to work. It's like, at what point, right? At what point do you look around and go, this is so dumb? Like, what are we doing here? So yeah, manufacturing that meaning in life is a powerful thing.
I love that. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, there's the saying, right, that if you're not jumping out of bed every morning, your goals are just not big enough. So I think that just really reminded me of that, and that's such an important point to make.
Yes.
Amen.
Well, this has been such an amazing episode. Thank you so much for coming on our show. So for our listeners, where can they find you? I know you're on YouTube, Instagram, where else?
Yeah, so YouTube is probably the biggest. Eddie Pinero, or the podcast, Eddie Pinero, the Your World Within podcast. I am on Instagram and TikTok and all those places too, under the same name. But yeah, the episodes go out Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube and the podcast. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. And for all our listeners, we are sending you so much love and light. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you both for having me. Appreciate it.